Today I'm going to show you what decades of experience have taught me about how to care for your guitar so that it performs perfectly day in and day out, and most importantly, stays in tune. We're going to be looking at a floating bridge, or tremolo, in this case, the Floyd Rose, but the principles I'm going to explain in this in-depth video will apply to any bridge, any guitar, any tuning, any number of strings. I want to teach you how to maintain a guitar the way it wants to be maintained so that you can sound better and play more confidently. Or maybe you're an aspiring luthier or a future guitar tech. I mean, how do those guys, those guitar techs, get those dream gigs working for huge bands, being backstage, touring the world? It takes a lot, but one of the big things is knowing your instrument inside and out so that you can hand your guy a guitar that's in tune, cleaned up, and rock solid every time, every night. So, if that sounds good, let's get into it. Hey, what's up? Rob Arnold here with what I hope is the first of many string changing series videos. I've been planning to do this for a long time. Stories I can tell, experiences I've had, you know, just changing strings, stuff like that. Backstages across the country, across the world. I've changed my own strings hundreds of times over the years, and I've had my strings changed over 1,000 times by other guys, you know, and you just learn a lot. I get asked questions about this stuff so much. Every time I'm changing strings here by myself, you know, I put on some music and I'm doing it, and I think, you know, I should just like record what's going on here and you know, make it useful for people. So like I said, I plan for this to be the first in many series because there's so much to cover. This is just going to be a quick one here with a Floyd Rose on a guitar with no spurzels, locking nut. This particular one happens to be set up in B standard, and that's what we're going to continue with, because once you get a guitar set up in a particular tuning and you have it intonated, you get the float right, everything's good, you need to stick with that, and that's the key. The same gauge strings every single time. If you put a set on there and you like it and everything feels good, the intonation's right, that means that a note down here is the same as here on the tuner. Okay, a lot of the time if you're doing chords up high above the 12th fret here, the strings will sound out of tune, as opposed to down here, that same chord, this C here, is going to sound better in tune than here. That means your intonation is out, and there's a particular process for that to set your intonation. If your float is off on a Floyd, like it's sticking up like that, you know, or it's way back or whatever, how to fix that. But once those things are right, and everything feels right, that's the name of the game, is getting your guitar to stay in tune, especially if you're playing live, you know, whatever, jam. And the worst thing is a guitar that's going out of tune all the time, and that's a guitar that isn't properly taken care of and isn't set up properly. So once it's set up properly, you got to be consistent with the strings and the tuning. If you're going to change your gauges or your tuning, it needs to be reset up. And people don't understand that, oh, you know, I got this guitar and I tried to drop it to C or whatever like that, and the bridge is like this. It's because it needs to be set up for that. And then, it was set up right and I had 10s on there, and then I went to 12s or 9s. Well, that's a different tension on the springs in here, and it's not gonna feel right, it's not gonna tune right, it's not gonna sit right. Things are a little bit different for a fixed bridge. You can get away with more, but still there's different tension than on the neck and truss rod, and it's just best to stay consistent. It's best to have a different guitar for every tuning you're playing in. I know that's easier said than done because the guitars are expensive and everything, but you know, if you play in a couple tunings, everybody's gonna have a couple guitars and a backup, things like that. So just consistency is the key. That's how I take care of all my guitars, by getting them set up perfectly, and then they last for years. People say that go through temperature changes, all that. I think that's bullcrap, because my guitars were in a trailer behind the bus 1 week in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's 112 degrees, and the next week in Alaska or northern Canada or something, where it was ice storms or whatever, and the guitars were still cool because they were set up properly the first time. And then if any slight adjustment is needed, you don't have to rework the whole thing. So consistency, a good foundation, stay in tune, that's what you want. First thing we're going to do, this guitar is in tune right now, and I'm just going to change the strings here. One little tip, and we'll do this again, is that I put a little sticker on the back of all my headstocks that says what it was tuned to, what the gauges are, and the date. So a lot of the time you're like, oh man, how old are these strings? Well, you can look. Maybe they're a month old, maybe they're a year old, maybe they're 10 years old. If you have that date, you know. Another sure thing is the G string. I put my finger underneath here and I slide like this. And if I can feel the frets, there's gonna be like, I feel little kinks in the string, little that's every fret, that's from being pushed down, and there's a little indentation, and you really feel it in the G string, I think more so than any other string. And if I feel a lot of those and it feels uncomfortable, I know it's time to change. If it's nice and smooth, I know they're brand new. I also like a 20 wound string. I like a wound G string there. Some guys like a plain string. The difference is that usually the first two strings here are just plain. They don't have a winding around them. And if you look closely at your strings, I know you guys can't see exactly what I'm doing here, but there's a winding around that, where there isn't here. This, you won't hear anything. Barely, just super smooth. This is the one, because these strings are wound. These are plain. When you get to the G, a lot of packs of strings have a plain or a wound. I prefer the wound. I just think it's faster because it's rounder. Sometimes if I happen to get a set that has the G that is plain, I just feel it's like a little more square. And the pick, when I'm going fast, you know, as it moves back and forth across the pick, I just feel a slight bit more resistance on a plain string versus a wound. Just a personal preference. Matt from Camara, he likes a plain, so it's just totally preference, but I like a wound string there. Right now I'm using these DRs, which I really like. I was a Dean Markley guy for years, but recently I switched over to DR. The guys are great, and they made me these custom sets of exactly what I like, which is an 11, a 13, a 20 wound, a 30, a 42, and a 52. So I'm rocking 11 to 52, always have. For a long time I was using a 56 down here just because I thought it had an effect on drop tunings, that a thicker gauge there would stay in tune better, but over the years I found out that that makes no difference. The 52 is just fine. I mean, granted, we're talking about what, 4 100ths or 1000ths or whatever it is in difference, so 11 through 52 is what I like. Again, completely preference. Let's get started. First thing, I'm gonna take these, open them up. I set the box aside just in case there's anything I need to look at. So I just set that aside, I don't throw it away right away. I take my strings. I'm always going to start from thickest to thinnest, changing. So I set them upside down. There's one out of order there. Okay, so I set them upside down. 52 at the top, 11 at the bottom. I set them there. So each one I take, everything's in order. I like to stay organized. Everything works out better. Always have a garbage can nearby so you can throw your stuff away, especially on tour, whatever. I personally hate it when I come to some corner of the venue, backstage or whatever like that, and guys have been changing strings all day and they just left their shit everywhere. It's like somebody that clips their toenails and just leaves it in a hotel room for you or whatever. You know, just clean up, keep your area nice, everything's better. Okay, strings are there. Tools we're gonna need. The Allen wrench. I prefer to, this is a trick I learned from an old tech, Ryan Fielding there, wrapping it with tape. One, it sticks out amongst other Allen wrenches so you know exactly which one you're looking for each time. And two, after a long day of changing, that's some extra padding in there. You'll notice when you're tightening and loosening, it's a little padding there and it feels great. We're gonna need that. Set of wire cutters. String winder we could use, polish and a cloth, tuner, cable, little amp. I always like to have a little amp handy. Also a little Marshall if I needed it, whatever like that, but so you can hear, especially if you're in a noisy venue, anything like that, so the stuff going on, you need to hear. Obviously you can't hear this if there's really anything going on, you know, unless you're alone like this, so it's good to have a little something nearby that you can hear to get you a starting point, like, oh, is this the right, whatever, say you're tuning E, is this the right E? You're looking on a tuner and it's super loud somewhere. What octave is it? You don't know. So you can get in the ballpark by hearing a little bit and then go on from there. A lot of times I'll even do a quick tuning before I fine tune after I change strings by just doing the 5th fret method, you know. Let's get started. First thing I'm gonna do, undo the nut, okay. I don't take all the strings off at once and then put all the strings back on again. Every once in a while I'll do that, maybe once a year or something like that if I really want to give the guitar a complete cleaning. But there's a couple reasons for that. One, you have to somehow lock off the Floyd, because if all the strings are gone, then it's gonna pull all the way back because all the tension is on the springs. There's no strings pulling that float back to normal. So you put something in there or whatever and it'll hold it. I just don't like to do that all the time. Another thing is I like to try to keep consistent tension on the neck as much as possible. It's just one other superstitious thing, that when it's set up and right, there's nothing like a guitar that's just in tune all the time and that you can count on. And that's what I'm striving for all the time. So just little superstitious things. So every once in a while I'll take them all off and give it a good cleaning or whatever, but for a daily changing, even weekly, whatever you're doing, stuff like that, I just go one string at a time. If these were Spurzels, which are locking tuners, the little thing you put the string through and then you can tighten it down, it won't move. In that case, there's a lot less wound around here, so you don't really need one of these. But in this case, I'm just gonna loosen it up. enough to be able to cut it. And just take her off. Another reason that I like to keep all the strings on and change one at a time is that I'm going to put this next one on and I'm going to tune it up. Again, we're going to B standard here, so I'm going to tune it to a B, and all the other strings should be pretty well in tune, and it's just easier to keep things consistent. By the time I get to the first string, it'll be a lot more in tune, because with a Floyd, it's constantly tuning one, going to the next, going to the next, going to the next, and by the time you've tuned your first string, the sixth is out again. So you go back. You do it again and again and again. By the time you get to the first, the sixth is out. Well, all the tension is getting set and being repositioned. Each time you go from sixth to first, from sixth to first, and sixth to first, the discrepancy will be less and less until it gets to the perfect point where you're almost perfectly in tune. You can lock down and then use your fine tuners. The same principle applies if you don't have fine tuners. You know, you just get as close as you can. So we're going to go from there. Next, undo this. Now the Floyds like this have this little block in here, and it's pushed forward that holds the string in there. Back in the day, I used to tighten these down way too much and they'd crack, and they're a pain in the ass. Once they're cracked, they're super hard to get out of there. This doesn't move freely and nicely, so, and then you have to replace it, and that's a pain in the ass too. So you just want to tighten it down so that it's snug enough to where it's not going to let loose. There's still the tiniest bit of play or whatever, but it's not going to crack. Grab our sixth string there and clip off the ball. Stick that in there. I like to keep the whammy bar there so I can keep that up and give myself a little room. Just tighten this down. I got that in there nice and straight. Actually, I don't. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a little bit off. I like to get it nice and straight. Move that over a little bit. Good. Good. Do the knot. Okay, now when we get to this point, I think about that as good. And what is that? I don't really know. 5 inches. If you have too much from like this, then it's going to be way too much of a wind around this. It's going to be messy and everything. So it's just experience, knowing exactly how much, you know, something like that, about 4 inches, let's say, above the fretboard, is going to give me enough grab of string here with the right amount of wind. There's lots of methods for this too. One thing I like to do is I like to point the little eyelet at me so that when I go to wrap around, it's not in some weird place for me to stick the string through. So I go around once, like that. Pull tight. Actually, got a little bit less there, yeah. Around, pull tight, then through. Right down. You want this that's coming through here to be on top of the string. I'm going to pull that tight, as tight as I can. It's hard to get the sixth. Then I yank it straight up. Then we will use a string winder, and I'm going to put my finger here and hold it down just to get things going. A little bit of slack there is okay. That's going to go away as things tighten up. Already starting to tighten up. I'm keeping my finger here so that it's flat against the headstock and it's going to make a nice wind. If I just let it loose, it would wind whatever way it wants to. But I'm dictating the way it's going to wind by holding it down. And then once that gets going like that, we're going to see the slack start going away over the fretboard on the neck. We've got a beautiful wind there. Also going to get my tuner going. I always just have this here, a good spot. It's my string changing tuner. Make sure your volume's up. Let's give it a test. Here we're looking for a B. Okay, close. Another thing I forgot to mention is that you want to get all of your fine tuners on a Floyd pretty much in the center. If it's like all the way down and then you tune it up and you think you're ready, you're like, oh man, I forgot to reset this, and you'll have to start over. So if you get them all pretty much centered, then you should be good. Another thing is that if you did everything right, these barely even ever move. You know, like I have them in the center when I start the string change, and when I go to change the next time, they're just in the same place because I take all the proper steps all the way through to maintain the consistency so that the guitar just stays in tune. There's never any huge changes I need to make here. If there's huge changes I need to make, then something else went wrong somewhere else. And then I will unlock, retune like this, relock, then fine tune. So we're at a B, okay, close enough there. All right, then the next step, all these strings need stretching, and I stretch the whole way so that when we get to that point at the end, after I've changed the first, and we go start tuning again from 6 to 1, from 6 to 1 to 6 to 1, it's already been stretched out. And there's gonna be less stretch happening over each tuning, and it's gonna get closer to the point where everything's in tune and staying in tune much more quickly. So what I'm gonna do here is put my finger here and push down, and then I'm gonna put my couple fingers under, and as I pull up, I'm gonna push down with my thumb. So basically, pushing down, pulling up, pushing down, and I'm just gonna do that. I keep this one here, pulling up and pushing down, getting a good stretch out of there. Don't forget to do as much as you can here. Now look, this is gonna be way flatter than B. See? If you would have saved that till the end, it just would have been a lot slower to tune. Do it again. Thicker the string, the more times this needs to happen. Bass, for sure. If you can see these here, I have different tunings set up. This is drop C, drop B, drop A, C standard, E standard, B standard, G for drop, it's a 7 string. These are just nice to have because when you have so many guitars and different tunings, it's nice to be able to have a little cheat sheet there of what we need. So we know we're going from low to high, B, E, A, D, F sharp, B, B, E, A, D, F sharp, B. Again, we're looking for B. Close, one more stretch. As you can see, it's dropping tune less. It's only at an A sharp right now. Where before it was in the G range. Good. I'm gonna move on. Repeat. Undo a little bit. Clip off. Use that whammy bar to pull that down, get that nice and centered. If we come across a block that's cracked, I will demonstrate the replacement process. But once I learn not to over tighten, I generally don't break them as much. Not that much. Wrap around, push through. Bend straight up. If you keep it down, there's room for it to slip, and it's in the way. When you're turning it, it hits the other ones. This way you can keep them all on there. I like to clip last. I like to clip off all the headstock ones last, just in case something goes wrong. If you still have this here, and you need to start over for whatever reason with a particular string, you could still do it. If you've clipped it off, then you just need a new string. Okay, we got that going. Again, I'm using the index finger of my right hand to push the string against the headstock as I get this wind going. Okay, looking for an E. So here's a situation where, let's just gauge where I am. This is supposed to be a B. I know I'm way too high. I'll take a minute here to get this back. 6 string. So I'm constantly tuning as I'm going, so that by the time everything's on and it's time to tune, I'm way closer in the process of getting everything dialed in. Now stretch. Every time that I get one string on and everything, I do all the strings that I've already done too. I re-stretch those. All right. Let's fast forward through the rest of them. Okay, we're at a good point now where all the strings are on there. They're pretty close in tune. I like to give the whammy bar a big tighten and loosen. Another stretch. Another tune. And as I said, each time that I go from 6 to 1 and then back to 6, everything will be a little closer. Everything went a little sharp because of that big whammy bar dive and stretch. Why sometimes that causes the strings to go sharp, I can't answer, but it doesn't surprise me. Okay, again, now we're close and we're to the point where I'm gonna cut these off, get them out of the way, they're annoying me. I used to try all these different things to get them, because you hate to have the little tiny thing that you stab your finger on. It's so annoying, whatever. So I used to try to all these different methods, but what I found is just do it as close as possible to the tuning peg. And then I carefully use the back of my wire cutters and bend that down. You don't want to slip and scratch your paint, your headstock. So I'm just carefully bending all these down, out of the way, at least dulling them off a little bit. So if you touch it with your finger, it's not razor sharp. Okay, those are all good. Also, one thing that caught my eye the whole time I was changing is, I don't know if you could see this or not, a certain light, maybe not, yeah, okay. You could see each fret marker. This is that G string, and every once in a while you could see, maybe not, there you go. See that? See each line there? Those are all the frets. So you know that it was time to change. Okay, clip those off, tune again. Okay, next thing I like to do is get my polishing stuff ready. Turning the guitar over and polishing and all that is gonna knock it out of tune as well. So I'll get it super close, I'll polish, I'll tune again, and then I do some touch-up polishing. Another trick is this guitar has an EMG 81 in there, which is active, and so it needs a battery. Another tip is on your battery, put a little piece of tape and put the date on there that you put it in too, so you know, oh, is this battery 5 years old or 6 months old? I think batteries last forever, as long as, not forever, but a long time, as long as you don't keep a cable plugged in. You know, that drains your battery. So I'm gonna get myself a little piece of tape here. Something like that. And this is a guitar I haven't used in a while, so the strings haven't been changed in a while. And as you can see there, see, this is B standard. 11 through 52. And the last time they were changed was April 30th of 2018. And I'm not gonna worry about pulling that off or anything. I just keep the B standard 11 through 52 there, and I just cover up the date. Handy to keep a pen at your station. And I'm gonna write today's date. Again, you could do the same for the battery, but I happen to know this battery is good. Okay. Quick polish. I don't really like to do the neck like this because it gets little fuzzies from the polishing cloth on the string, and then you gotta go like this. And they definitely dampen your sound. So the only reason I did that is for the sake of the example. Most of the time I'll only clean the fretboard like that when I take all the strings off. And then I'll do a deep cleaning. I'll put some polish on there, let it sit for a while, go in there, do the whole shebang. Got this there. Good thing for whammy bars, you can get under here by pulling that down. I keep my guitars nicely polished all the time, so it's not like it needs some super extravagant job. It's already pretty looking good. Always like to do this. A natural satin neck feels so nice. Nice coat of polish on there. I'll do one more to get all the fingerprints off when we're totally done, after we've locked down. Okay. Keep tuning. Stretch. All the stretching is just so necessary. Especially, let's say you're a tech for a guitar player or whatever. The last thing you want is to hand him a guitar that's gonna go out of tune when he's banging on it midway through the first song or whatever. So the more stretching you've done, the more battle ready it is, the more it's gonna take and the more it's gonna stay in tune. And if you're a tech, if your guitars stay in tune, you keep your job a lot longer. Once those are good, we're gonna lock down and then fine tune. Now locking, every once in a while, I'll notice will sharpen all the strings, probably because it's putting in an extra bit of tension up here. Doesn't happen every time, but a lot of the time it does. That's what the string tree is supposed to help with, I guess, but see how that went sharp? But if your fine tuner was in the middle, that slight adjustment means nothing. After this is good, best thing to do is play it for a while too before you're gonna record or anything like that. Retune again. There's nothing like playing it for 10 minutes or something like that to really give the strings a good stretch and get them ready for whatever is about to happen to them. Okay, so that's good. On the polish, I wanna show you guys something here too. Look at this float. It's absolutely perfect. Absolutely level. It's not falling back in the body. It's not up like that. It's just laying perfectly level. So that's good. And this guitar is ready to rip. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you want to see more, you know what to do. Got to subscribe, become a part of the community, and let's talk guitars, music, production, all sorts of stuff. Thanks for coming. Check you later.